Tonight we're going to be talking about the always important and ever-present trauma reversal and healing, and the importance of healing and all the stuff I always talk about. Specifically, I want to talk about generational trauma, and it's linked to what you may have heard me refer to a few times as the ritualistic and systematic traumatization of humanity over time. You know, in reality, we live in a PTSD world. Like, all of us are always in a state of PTSD. The human sort of natural state of peace, love, compassion, we are literally not afforded the opportunity to sort of even explore that state due to the way the world is. It's not possible in the world we live in. You know, we've sort of been stuck here for a minute. And if we think about what the Great Awakening is, you know, this concept of the Great Awakening is really about getting over our trauma. It's about getting over our generational trauma, and it's basically about separating ourselves, our soul DNA, like our matrix, our internal matrix, from the generations that came before us. If we think about what the generations before us have done, like what their fruit, like what fruit they have given rise to, what fruit they bear, the fruit has not been aspirational. We should be aspiring to more. War, deception, cheating, lying, these are not good things. With the amount of propaganda and sort of attention that's being paid to everything, that it can just be everything negative, right? Everything fearful, fear-inspiring, terror-inspiring. You know, this process is separating the wheat from the chaff, right? Like, if you've ever used a sifter, just think of that. Just, you know, that whole sifting. Like, let your, you know, get into it a little bit. That's what's happening. People are being separated based on how they think and what they allow to sort of influence their thinking, their life, you know, what direction they want to head in, what vision they have for their future. We can't use the same thinking that got us here to get us out of here. And so if we're basically parroting what the generations that came before us sort of value, what they believe is important, and no disrespect, but that doesn't mean we have to emulate them. You know, we can learn. You know, that's how it's supposed to work. What is being sort of bandied about is the public narrative and the public discourse is largely reflects the values of a bygone era. A bygone era that has to be replaced with something. That needs to be replaced with something. And so in order to have something to replace it with, we need to evolve beyond it. We need to reverse our trauma. You know, we need to have a new way of understanding, a new way of thinking that precludes us or insulates us or allows us to apply new principles and beliefs to a way of living. Okay? Because essentially what we know now is that it's kind of all been a big lie. Like, we are 180 degrees ass backwards. Humanity is, some people think, 350 years behind schedule on our spiritual and conscious evolution. I mean, think about that. We're behind schedule, 350 years. And in order to sort of go where we can get, the secret is to reverse trauma. So it's important to reiterate the fact that we live in a multi-generational post-traumatic stress environment. You know, the mindset necessary to perpetuate this cycle is passed orally. We are subjected to this through an oral tradition, and it's reinforced by the external narrative too. And the primary message is, if you disagree with me, I'll abandon you. You know, and we see that reflected a lot by sort of the people who raised us, if we're Generation X. And we also see that reflected in society's narrative. Like, if you disagree, you will be abandoned. So abandonment, okay, this is a tactic that's used to get people to agree with you or else. And it's also a tool that's used to reinforce the post-traumatic stress, multi-generational environment that we live in. So it's passed orally and it's passed through example, right? Because children learn from what their parents do. From birth until death, some people go their entire lives without breaking free from the influence that came before them. And Great Awakening that's taking place right now is that we're reversing our trauma and we're letting go. We're going beyond the generation that came before us and the beliefs and values that that generation cherished and valued. Like, it's not working. We're going to try something else. So we're getting beyond this PTSD narrative that's kept us trapped in our trauma. You know, it was done on purpose to keep us here and to keep us disempowered. So another bullet point in the multi-generational PTSD narrative is the spell of achievement. Achievement really is the manifestation of a consumer-based culture. You know, you're taught to make something of yourself rather than allowing the experience of your life to make who you are. And that's what winds up happening anyway. Like, ultimately, life wins, okay? Life will make you what you're supposed to be. You will become what you came here to be, or you will not be here long. Through achievement, you know, which is, I think, one of these legacy sort of values from the previous generation, it's temporary peace, right? Achievement leads to the next achievement. It doesn't last long. It's not true inner peace. It's just a measure of how much we can then consume. We don't stay in one place very long. Like, we don't have, like, serenity. So it's not long until we're on to the next achievement. We have to. And the wheel goes round and round and round. Basically, you know, our achievement allows us to consume more, right? Like, if we achieve a lot, we get to consume a lot. And sort of, they both have this very temporary effect. Like, how good do you feel after eating a donut, really? And so, once again, we have it completely ass backwards, right? 180 degrees wrong. Like, achievement does not define who we are. Who we are defines what we should be achieving. In the physical, this is why not consuming, fasting, is generally understood as how we prepare our body as a vessel to connect or to correspond with God. Like, if you want to talk to God, don't eat. Don't eat. You fast. If you want to connect with God, you fast. You prepare your body that way because you are an empty vessel that is prepared to receive. And, you know, in our society, there's no real rite of passage. Okay, there's no initiation or ceremony that graduates us from the spell or from the influence of the generation that came before us. If you want to get off that old sheet of music, like, reverse your trauma. You know, you have to become who you want to be. You know, you have to meet the requirements of your requirements. And unhealed, traumatized people who are reliving their parents' and their grandparents' trauma just are not the people they want to be. They're avatars of previous generations. So unresolved PTSD gives the power to your fear, not your courage. It's all just so that the ego can protect itself. About preservation of what's best for the ego, not you. If you don't know this, your ego exists to protect itself, you know, and in so doing, you're more or less protected throughout the course of your life until it comes down to you or it, and then the ego's always going to choose it over you. Fear is a very big, bright, shiny manifestation of egotism, right? Your ego is in control if you're afraid. And another thing about consumerism is that it perpetuates this false notion that we need something from out there to come in here and make us feel like real people, when in fact, you know, we're born with everything we need. It's all in here. Everything is in here. So 180, right? Like, just 180. What's up is down and down is up. You know, what's right is wrong and wrong is right. What's crazy is sane and what's sane is crazy. That's the world we live in. So it's not about what's out there. It's about what's going on in here. And on some level, a lot of us are starting to realize that. And if we want practical sort of advice about what we can do, like how we can sort of take it from here, it's figure out how to reverse the trauma that happened as a result of you being raised, how and by whom, and because it was not right for the most part. Theoretically, there may exist people who, or beings, who understand sort of and can sort of have the perspective and understanding, and I'm not ruling them out, but if you're wondering like why you're having an awakening, why things are making more sense than they've ever made in your life, but at the same time it makes no sense, you know, I'm letting you know that the first step, you know, is to sort of acknowledge that That's not you. That was passed to you through an oral tradition. Think of Noam Chomsky and the organ of the mind, right? That's what he's talking about. Like when we hear people say, like addiction and alcoholism and all that, it's genetic. It's genetic. It's not genetic. It's not genetic. Sorry if that's what you think, but it's not. It's actually an oral tradition. It's actually, alcoholism is passed through what we say and how we behave and what we impart onto our children. Alcoholism is a multi-generational trauma response that is handed down through verbal and oral tradition and through behavior modeling. There you go. If it's all environmental, because in a way we're all predisposed to the isms because we're human and we live in a war zone and we're kind. We're pink, for God's sake. We don't have protection. We're babies, and we live in a war zone. We live in a hellhole, and so the values that exist on planet Earth are not good for people. They're here actually to make us ill. They're here to make us doubt ourselves. They're here to make us feel weak. They're here to do the opposite of what we're here to do. They are here to limit, right? They're here to impart limitation on what are inherently limitless beings. Okay, we are limitless. Okay, so we are living under the spell of a lie and that lie is literally being perpetuated by a trauma narrative until we call time out and say, no, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't add up. This is not what we came here to be. I mean, we're humans. It keeps going. So, and the practical first step to take, if you're having an awakening, is to understand generational trauma and do things to reverse it. There are lots of great, what's her name? The holistic psychologist. Yeah, so in perpetuating the false notion that what we need is outside of us, not inside of us, it's a very sort of sneaky way of taking our power, or of sort of enabling us to give up our power without even knowing it's happening. Remember, the ego is here for its survival, not yours. And generally speaking, that which you want to do least is what you need to do first. Once you sort of plunge into the process of reversing your trauma, heading in the direction of your fear, you realize you have nothing to fear at all. You realize you had nothing to fear in the first place. So that's it for now. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you next time.